Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. My name is Doug Brunke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. I love Malaysia. I gotta say that, I've been very fortunate over the last 20, even maybe 30 years to have visited Malaysia many times. I've lived in Singapore across the straits from Johor and have traveled there, golfed there, the Selangor Pewter area, and been all over the country by train, by plane, by car. And I can say the people are spectacular. It's a great place to do business, very business oriented. And so just personally, I feel very much thankful to have had the experiences that I've had, and I'd love for more business people to understand and appreciate the value that Malaysia has, very likely for their business. And so part of the purpose of today certainly is to explain that, and we have experts in the room to be able to do that. The first one is our friends at Matrade, and Ben is very close to me physically here in Los Angeles, and I got to meet him at the Global Chamber Los Angeles holiday party. So really appreciate your involvement there. We've enjoyed working with Matrade over the years and really appreciate your expertise. The Malaysian Investment Development Agency, MIDA, is focused in on coming to Malaysia, and Matrade tends to focus in on companies leaving Malaysia for the US and other locations. And they together work to be able to help and educate people from around the world to better connect with opportunities in and out of Malaysia. So I think you're going to be sharing a little bit of an overview and how Malaysia is a great partner for companies and businesses and people around the world. So would you mind kicking things off?
Yeah, no, thank you for the brief introduction, and I have prepared a short slide to make sure I'm aligning to what we're focusing today. So if you don't mind, allow me to share the slide. Yeah, all right. So just a brief overview about the outline of the short presentation. It will cover who we are, a bit information about the bilateral trade between Malaysia and the US. What are the activities undertaken, why Malaysia, and whatnot, right? First and foremost, we are the government agencies under the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry, MITI. So our mandate is to develop and promote Malaysia exports to the world. Our role is almost similar to USTDA, right? And for our as mentioned, under the GDP, our forte is to focus on the export element in order to increase our GDP in macro perspective. Then, as of now, we have 49 offices all over the world, and our headquarters obviously in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Out of 49 offices, 3 offices are concentrated in the US. For me, we are managing the west coast of US, which is Texas up north to North Dakota towards west is within our territory. On top of that, we have our colleague in New York as well as in Miami, Florida. So for New York, they are covering for East Coast, whereas for Miami, they are covering for Georgia and Florida, as well as the South Americas. A bit overview on trade perspective in 2023. US always been our so-called top 3 be it trading nation, export and import destination. It's all year on year. In fact, during the latest January-November trade figures, it's been constant. US has been always important to us. Reason being due to the investment that we have in Malaysia from the US. So it is intra-trade as well as there's also a lot of new products opportunities that are available for us to share in the US. Similarly, we also import a lot from the US. So as far as rank is concerned, on Malaysia's perspective, or in US perspective, Malaysia is the 19th trading partner, but as it stands, it is climbing up. So not sure about 2024 figures. Let's see. All right. And these are more or less the trend over the years, since for the past 20 years. There is up and down. The fiascos usually during the economic crisis, as well as the recent what do you call it, COVID, but still the upward trend is still there. And looking at the 2024 progress, there is another spike in 2024, hopefully. To go through into details, obviously E&E always the main exports from Malaysia to the US. Similarly, we also import a lot of raw mats for the process it in Malaysia, then re-export it back to the US. So these are among the breakdowns. Then a bit why Malaysia? Because there's a lot of concerns, or there's a lot of talks about why Malaysia instead of other countries, despite of the size, despite of the geography and whatnot. So why Malaysia? If I can recap or summarize it into 10 main points, is we have the diverse range of quality products and services. We might not be the cheapest, so-called per se, due to the economies of scale, but rest assured, the products that produced or manufactured by Malaysia is at par, or even better than what we have in the market. We have a transparent and fair trading regulation. We don't have any regulation that is biased and whatnot. Well-developed trade support facilities, reliable suppliers. It is similar to the point earlier, more similar to the point earlier. Professional business culture, excellent track record as trading nation. For information, Malaysia has been net exporting countries since the early 70s, when we have the industrial revolution, where we shift from agriculture-based economy into a manufacturing-based economy. So we've been doing external trade since early 70s until now. So we are experiencing that. And most of our products are compliance to the international standards. We have a friendly business environment, good manufacturing processes, practices, as well as pro-business government policies. So I want to dive in more on these pro-business government policies. So for us to so-called support the expansion of industries, exports, as well as investments in Malaysia, the ministries have come out with the new industrial master plan, NIMP, whereas the aim of this NIMP is to put a clear guideline or strategic direction on our industrial development. At the same time, it is also a guide on investors on where Malaysia's true north as well as expansion direction, and to also highlight Malaysia government role in shaping the economy. So under this NIMP 2030, we have basically 5 priority sectors, which is E&E, automotive, aerospace, chemicals, and pharmaceuticals. But this doesn't neglect the other industries as well, other sectors as well. This will be the main pillars, but still under the NIMP, we will have all other subsectors to complement each other. So under these priority sectors, there is a sub-segment where we call it the Malaysian National Semiconductor Strategy. So all this while, with the investment of a lot of multinational companies in Malaysia, not only from the US as well as from other countries, we've been nurturing the semiconductor industries in Malaysia. But all this while, it seems like we are more focused towards the back end of the supply chain. Now we are focusing on to bring further the so-called expertise, whereas most like under the strategy, we're going to nurture 10 so-called pioneer companies to focus to spearhead the industry, and we want to focus more on the front end of the supply chain, which is focusing on the R&D as well as the other front end station. So to support that, we also have few other what do you call it, framework. Among others, is the National Trade Blueprint Strategic Framework, which is spearheaded by Madrid. Then this is where to complement whatever active strategies in place. This will be the pillars, and on top of that, to we also have FTAs signed, be it bilateral as well as multilateral. Unfortunately, we don't have any yet with the US, be it under almost previously under CTPPP, but along the way, there's a development happening. But we look forward to expand a lot more FTAs, be it bilateral as well as multilateral, to support the trade activities in Malaysia. And at the same time, we also assist Malaysian companies with various platforms. For instance, in the US or in the West Coast, we've been participating in Semicon West for the past maybe more than 10 years or 15 years for Semicon West. So this year around, it will be in Phoenix, Arizona for the first time ever. They shifted from San Francisco. For the past how many years it was in San Francisco. Now they shift it out to Phoenix, and alternately it will be for 2025 will be Phoenix, 26 SF, 27 Phoenix, and so on, so forth. On top of that, we also have our signature event in Malaysia, the Malaysia International Halal Showcase. I will dive down into that in the later slide, as well as the Malaysia International Furniture Fair. And what we do, other than having events and whatnot, on our daily basis, we also do business matchings. So with thanks to the advancement of technology, we don't need to fly our buyers or our suppliers all the way from Malaysia to the US, vice versa. We can just leverage on the advancement technology and have all this online. Maybe the first few meetings can be conducted online. Then moving forward, for the follow-ups and whatnot, we leave it to both companies and suppliers to discuss further, be it physically and whatnot. Yeah. Other than that, let's see. Malaysia is also taking part in the World Expo, or we call it this year they call it Osaka Expo 2025. We will be part of the Malaysia Pavilion. Madrid will be leading the Malaysia Pavilion. The event will be held from 13th of April through 13th of October 2025. I also welcome the Global Chamber members who have time or who happen to be in Osaka within the duration. Feel free to visit our pavilion. I can share the details in the event you guys are there. I'm more than happy to share the details to you guys for that. Right. This is our signature event, the Malaysia International Halal Showcase, where we house more than 1,000 exhibitors specifically on halal-related products and services. When we talk about halal, it's not focused mainly on food and beverages. In fact, the supply chain is more vast than that. So for this, we also bring in buyers from all over the world to the event. So in the event, and we will give some sort of incentives to the buyers. If anyone interested, let me know. I'm more than happy to facilitate your trip to the event. And at the same time, for 2025, we're gonna also have Mihas at Shanghai. This is the first time ever we're gonna have it in Shanghai. Previously, we had for last year we had Mihas at Dubai. So this year we're gonna have Mihas at Shanghai. Also, if you guys are interested with the details, I'm more than happy to assist. I think yeah, that's it. About it's more than 10 minutes. Sorry, Doug. So I tried to limit my slide into 10 minutes, but yeah, that's it. I'm still around. We can have a further conversation of this, but if needed, this is my email as well as my LinkedIn account for reference. Thank you.
Irvin Francis, known as Ben, Trade Commissioner for Trade based in Los Angeles. We're going to keep going just so that we can finish up at the top of the hour. We have four more speakers, and what we'll try to do, if you do have a question, I encourage you to ask it in the chat. And then we may have some time for people to ask a question during the program. Raise your hand, and we're happy to find a way to call on you as well. The next section will be led by Jermaine Thomas, who will be talking about setting up in Malaysia. Jermaine is the founder and director of ASEANS, and I believe you're based in KL.
Yes.
Jermaine, thank you for joining us today. What could you tell us about the ease or difficulty of setting up in Malaysia? I understand it's relatively simple on average.
Yeah, thank you, Doug and Luis, for having me. It's not easy to talk right after Matrade. So I've been based in Malaysia for the last 10 years. First, I was working for multinationals, and then I set up my own company 3 years ago. So I also learned by myself how easy it was to set up a company in Malaysia. Now I'm helping foreign companies to also export or invest in Malaysia. First, I would say, as an advice, is before you decide to invest in Malaysia, is to come and visit the country, to come and visit, especially during international exhibitions that Ben just mentioned. There are plenty of big size exhibitions happening every year in Malaysia regarding aerospace, defense, building materials, food and beverage. So those exhibitions give you a good overview of what's happening here and what you could be doing here. Then, depending on the industry you are into, there are some favorable industries to be based in Malaysia, such as the semiconductors, aerospace, automotive, oil and gas, oleochemicals, even furniture. So there are some industries where it really makes sense to be based in Malaysia for manufacturing and for exporting. In terms of doing business, Malaysia is always well ranked by the World Trade Organization and other agencies. The business is following or was inspired, the local regulations are widely inspired by the common law from the UK. So it's quite similar to what we can find in Europe or in the US. It's much easier to understand at what's happening in Vietnam or Indonesia or Thailand, for example. So as a Westerner, we understand much quicker how it works. 100% foreign-owned businesses are allowed in most industries in Malaysia, so it's also a big advantage, again, compared to its neighbors. We always prefer to be owning our business 100% rather than having to use proxies or local partners when it's not necessary. And then in terms of getting access to skilled labor, of course, it's a challenge worldwide for everybody right now to have access to the right people. But Malaysia has a good education system, speaking a lot of languages, and Malaysians travel well. So it's also good to have a regional HQ in Malaysia and prospect the rest of Asia from Malaysia. In terms of access to utilities, electricity, and water, most of the time it's also quite easy to get. Of course, there are some concerns right now that too many data centers may eat most of the electricity supply, but this is another topic. And in terms of export, very good infrastructure in Malaysia, the ports, the airports, the roads. As Ben mentioned, Malaysia is a net exporter for more than 30 years. So they do know how to export quickly anywhere around the world. And the numerous free trade agreements they have with many countries is very helpful to export with free of duties. So that's very quick introduction about setting up a business in Malaysia. I don't know if, Doug, you want me to go further or if we shall move to the next speaker. Doug, you are muted, sorry.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you for the conversation. Great information. You said you've been there for, was it 10 years?
Yes.
Okay. And then what types of industries have you personally been involved with?
So I've been mostly involved in construction, building materials, manufacturing, healthcare. Those are the main sectors I've been dealing with.
Very good. And which countries coming in have you primarily been involved with?
Mostly with European countries. Of course, France, as per my accent, you can guess. Switzerland, Finland, Germany. And we are talking now to also companies from Australia. And also we are talking to Malaysian companies that are willing to export to Europe, for example.
Wonderful. Thanks. Stay here, and we'll continue to have you available for the Q&A. We'll have some time, hopefully, at the end for if you have questions in the audience, either put them in the chat or save them for the end, and hopefully we'll have some time. I would imagine, Jermaine, that you've worked with Christophe. Christophe is
Yes.
with JLL. So you probably had a beer or two, maybe even with him. I'm not sure, but however,
we're drinking wine. We're French.
I see. Oh, very good. Are you French as well?
Yes, unfortunately for you guys.
Oh, what? Why is that?
No, joking.
Oh, okay. Very good. How long have you been in Malaysia?
3 years in Malaysia, and I was previously 5 years in the Philippines.
Okay.
And before in Moscow, Russia.
Oh,
yeah.
very global.
Yeah,
And where in France are you originally from?
Normandy. 10K from D-Day.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, congratulations on such an amazingly global career. So your perspective is awesome because you can compare Malaysia with other places. Tell us more about what it's like the real estate market there and what people can expect.
Well, let me give you first a big overview on the real estate. Extremely buoyant. I mean, I will take it after COVID. I mean, as we all know, during COVID, nobody was really doing well, but the recovery has been quite quick and rapid. in most of the asset classes. Maybe office leasing is a bit more subdued, and this is down to the outcome of COVID. Return to work and return to office is a challenge in some of the Asian countries. Less in Malaysia, but still a challenge. And also there is a supply-demand imbalance. A lot of multinational, and we all have our 2030 goals, 2040 goals about zero carbon, sustainability, ESG. There is a growing lack of what we call green office building, which creates either a slowdown on the deals or the move of the company, and some prefer to wait to have an opportunity to move to a greener building. The market is really three sub-market. We have KL, Greater KL, you have Penang, and you have Johor. We have initial green shoots in Sarawak, Sabah, a bit in Kedah, but it's really the three major market. And as KL would cover most of the asset classes, and we talk about office, investment sales, hotel, retail, logistic and industrial, manufacturing, data center, healthcare, education. Johor, and already mentioned, is the data center in Malaysia, initiated initially by the Singaporean government, who put a moratorium on new data center construction in Johor in 21, and what all the company, because of e-commerce, logistic, industrial growing, they just crossed the border and established shop in Johor. We have currently 9 operating data center, 22 under construction, and I was told by Invest Johor that there is another 26 application pending. Somebody mentioned the power and water for data center, and it's becoming an issue. The government just announced last week that data center will have to pay a premium on the power supply and water, and also there will be a certain percentage where they will be obligated to buy green power. Penang, semiconductor manufacturing, this is a clear established center. We have a strong growth, and also we started to move out of definitely Penang Island, which is and was initial industrial development. We are now talking about across the bridges, which in Penang is an island. You've got two big bridges connected to mainland, Batu Kawan, and now we're even talking about Kedah, which is a state near the Thai border, which becoming the darling. As I say, it's a bit fragmented in terms of which sub-market is leading which asset classes. Why Malaysia? And I think Ben and Germain already touched on it. Definitely ease of doing business, English speaking, English law. There is talent. There is a good education system, even if some of the engineers and talent that are needed in Malaysia are going to work abroad, which is understandable. This creates some shortage in some area. You can own real estate, you can buy land. There's only one little requirement. If the land is Bumiputra, which means a land which is identified as Malay or native land, you can only acquire this land or build if you have a 30% Malay shareholding. But overall, it's a very good country to do business. We're seeing a strong interest, including some clear investment already from what we call China Plus One, where we see either foreign company in China looking at expanding in other countries, and we also have Chinese companies looking at expanding in other countries. In overall, stability, talent, ease of doing business, and a clear geographic location. Malaysia is at the crossroad of a lot of countries, between countries. And there is clearly, when I was in Philippines, you invest for the domestic market, 120 million people. In Malaysia, it's only 32 or 33, but most of the heavy or foreign investment is for Malaysia and exporting in the region. Quick summary of the real estate and why it's a good place to be if you want to invest in properties.
Brilliant. Thank you for the summary. What's your expectation for yourself in the future? Are you going to stay in Malaysia for a while?
I don't know. I mean, I may follow Germain's track and leave the corporate world and do my own thing. I don't know. I mean, I have a challenge on my hand with GLL. We acquired a company last year. We're expanding, we're investing, we're growing extremely rapidly, which for me, the challenge is what makes me wake up in the morning or go to bed late at night. But I still have a job to do, but not against having another interesting challenging or potentially enjoying my property in south of France if I have enough of the corporate world.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for sharing all of that. And for those of you in the audience, please continue to, if you are asking questions, I see a hand raised, but I don't see where it is actually. Who's got their hand raised? I just see that there is one raised, but for some reason I don't see it. Okay.
Hey, Doug. This is Pankaj. Thank you. I'm doing too many things, doctor office. So I wanted to connect with him regarding FDI. So Cesar, please connect me. I'm joining through my mobile. So I wanted to connect with him regarding foreign direct investment in Malaysia. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. And for some reason, I still, your iPhone 176, I see. So that's, okay, I got it. So Pankaj will connect you. And he's very much tied into funding for FDI. So let's continue to go around the room with our speakers. We have two more, and then we'll have time for questions. The next speaker is Julian Searle. He's the Chief Development Officer of the Ocean Cleanup. And Julian, are you on the ground today in Malaysia? And I think you're going to give us some real-world examples.
Not on the ground in Malaysia, but on the ground at the home office in Austin, Texas.
Oh, okay. Very good. So it sounds like, though, you have some great experience with dealing with companies from Malaysia. So please share.
Sure. So currently at the Ocean Cleanup, we have a small operation in Malaysia, and I have the pleasure of going there every few times a year to work with my team. That's not what I thought I'd talk to you guys about today, because it's a pretty small government-oriented program that we're running in KL. What I want to talk to you guys about is prior to that, I spent 8 of the last 9 years building and managing a supply chain company. And we're a supply chain services company where we helped corporations, big multinationals, and startups, and everything in between across all major industries. We help them with a variety of technical and operational support services around the world. So a company in the US that's trying to build something in China or Vietnam or Malaysia or Mexico, and they need resources, both technical and operational, they would come to us and we would help them as a service. An interesting program that we offered companies was called supplier selection and landscape analysis. And this was where companies either have a supplier that's not working out, that they're struggling with, or they're looking for a new supplier from scratch, or they're, as you mentioned previously, working on a China plus one strategy, which we called the ABC, anywhere but China strategy, which launched during the last tariff hikes of Donald Trump. They would come to us and say, hey, look, we're trying to build this consumer product or an industrial product. This is what we're trying to build. And we want to know where to build it and with which suppliers to build it. And so step one was our global landscape analysis. And we would look at, very custom, obviously, for each company because of their market conditions and their technology requirements and so on. But we would map out many countries, about 12 per sort of service. And we would look at the pros and cons of this particular company doing business in these 12 companies. These 12 or so countries. And we'd create basically a radar chart that says, for you, based on these reasons, here's the sweet spot, be it China, be it Malaysia, be it India. And Malaysia ranked top, close to the top or at the top in almost all cases because of a variety of conditions that people don't obviously always think through. So I'm going to share some of those conditions and why Malaysia ranked so high. On top of that, one CEO told me once, he said, if you're going to look to find and build a new supply chain, pick a country where the engineers like to go. And that's to your earlier comment, Doug. Malaysia is a great place. People like to be there. You want to send 3 engineers over there to get something done. They're happy to go. There's a lot of places in the world where they're much less happy to go. That's a soft skill of Malaysia. I'd say it doesn't work for the CFO. They don't care about that. They need to see the data and the logic behind the decision to manufacture in Malaysia. So that's our radar chart would focus on 8 or 10 reasons or comparative areas across countries. One was mentioned earlier, also legal terms. It's important for Western companies, and my customers were predominantly US or European. And they wanted to build or manufacture in countries that had laws that were Western in similarity, at least, and that were practiced and followed. Obviously, a lot of counterfeit and a lot of unethical behavior in certain parts of the world that need to be avoided when you're building a product somewhere. Malaysia always scored very high. The strong academic background of the country and the citizens, and the international presence that is built created these conditions on the legal front that were usually very amicable for most companies in the US and Europe to do business with. Technology and engineering, not only within Malaysia, but its proximity to key components or advanced components from Taiwan or China that need to be integrated into that particular product. Malaysia is in a good spot, essentially, to have access to elements or components that it doesn't manufacture within Malaysia itself. Cost is obviously a factor when people are looking at where to build something. Malaysia is not the cheapest place in the world. It's not the most expensive place in the world, and I think it would score a 7 out of a 10, maybe an 8, depending on the actual product specifics, but it is cost competitive. And particularly over the last 5 years, that the Taiwanese and then the Chinese labor rates inflated so high that the costs swung dramatically in favor of Malaysia. Along those lines, we always did an assessment of a geopolitical risk. We're looking at Indonesia versus Malaysia versus Mexico versus China and India. So where are the geopolitical risks? Obviously, it's a crystal ball exercise, but insight into tariff swings, for example, and potential shifts in US policy or European policies factors into why you might pick Malaysia. And in that sense, obviously, Malaysia also scored very high as being a low-cost advantage versus a China due to tariffs. And the potential risk of new or dramatic swings in the import rules or laws or fees always was favorable with Malaysia based on the stability over time. Similarly, we always looked at FX currency swings. And I think you saw in the Martrade presentation, the stability of the import-export with the US and the overall trade balance has created quite a consistent exchange. And as a manufacturer, you don't want to go build your supply chain in a country and then find out 6 months later that the financial exchange markets are volatile. Suddenly, all your cost data that you use to base your decision to move there is potentially not valid. So Malaysia always has and still has a stable trade balance relating in a stable currency, et cetera. Talent, as you guys might know, in the manufacturing world, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And it's very important for all companies that are making anything to know that there's talent available in close proximity to that supply chain that can jump in and solve these problems, whether it's a new product engineering challenge or a quality challenge that pops up for some reason in the manufacturing runs. Malaysia has great engineering talent within Malaysia, also proximity to Singapore and some neighboring countries where talent is also centered in certain technologies and certain areas of expertise, but is available. So you're going to be able to solve problems as they come up as you need it, which is critical for, as I said, anybody that's building anything, and then will have a variety of problems. And the last point I think I had here is the language barrier. It's also a factor when deciding where to manufacture and where to implement or build your supply chain, is the language barrier, because you don't want to have, you're going to have round the clock phone calls and conversations with engineers across the planet. But having those in the native language is usually, well, is obviously, it makes life easier and prevents other mistakes from happening, which we did see and do see in other countries where the language barrier is more difficult or more extreme. So I think we worked with 200 or 300 companies over 8 years. And we didn't do this service for all of them. Many of them had existing suppliers in Malaysia or in other parts of the world. But we were constantly looking at this for them or new customers. And we probably ran dozens of these analytical processes to help companies figure out where in the world to manufacture. Capacity, it was often the case where we'd say, Malaysia's number 1 or number 2, but there may not be capacity. Therefore, there'd be a different decision that came out of it. But assuming the capacity was there, Malaysia was, pretty much close to top of the list on many occasions. So I had the opportunity to learn all of that stuff over 8 years and work with companies on that analysis, and then help them actually set up supply chains in Malaysia and basically validate the data. I don't think we had any companies come back to us and say, you told us to pick Malaysia and that was the worst idea we ever heard. We never had that. So it was proof was in the pudding, and there was a lot of success stories. So very short summary, this process takes 2 or 3 months to actually do, to gather all this information on the current global situations and status. But I don't think it's changed in the last year. I think it's only improved. So if I was to run that process again for somebody else or another company, I'm pretty sure Malaysia would be one of the top locations.
Fantastic. Thank you for that information built off of your expertise. One of our favorite presentations by, I think it must have been Maida at Global Chamber, was the story of the Hershey factory. And I presume it's still successful, but you mentioned about logistics and proximity, and the proximity to the port in Singapore was one of the key aspects of that, being, they put their plant in Johor. So fingers crossed that's still all worked out well, but apparently, to your point, there was a suggestion that they moved to Malaysia. They had choices all over the world. They chose Malaysia. It was a successful choice, and that's how it was presented. And hopefully that's still the case for a lot of the reasons that you explained. I presume that expertise you've had is now used with your work with the ocean cleanup, or is it just completely different?
A little bit. At the ocean cleanup, we're helping to rid the world's oceans of plastic. It's a multi-billion-dollar problem that we're tackling across the globe. And my work at the Ocean Cleanup is mostly focused on the business development and the funding. So I'm working with governments and corporations with a team of 30 or so folks in my department to go raise the billions of dollars that we need to go and implement our operational systems that collects and prevents plastic from entering the oceans.
Great.
But I've got a supply chain team there that's working on expanding, obviously, our supply chain as we grow, and they tap into my knowledge daily, and I try and help them figure out how to think through exactly this problem. Okay, how are we going to scale? Which suppliers are we going to use? Where should they be located? Obviously, the landed costs analysis, but all of these other things I just touched on are part of that, and I basically help them with that as needed.
One of the greatest supply chain stories is the semiconductor industry. And if you haven't read the book Chip Wars, this is for everyone. It's brilliant. There's not too much on Malaysia there, but there is some. I think another book that called The Rise and Fall of Nations goes to one of the key points that you brought up, and that is the stability of Malaysia over a long period of time. And those bean counters, they definitely want to be able to have some stability so that the numbers they crunch today are similar to 5 years from now and 10 years from now and 20 years from now, where Thailand would be an example where there have been dramatic swings over time. It just has been managed quite a bit differently than the country of Malaysia or Singapore, or more, if you will, stable countries economically. So thank you for bringing up those highlights. We have about 10 minutes left, and we have 5 minutes from Louis Lau, who's the founder and director of the Vorum Group. So we'll have just a couple minutes to wrap up, and that might be a question, and it might be some final comments from the speakers. Louis is originally from Sarawak. He's been a member of Global Chamber twice, one with another company, and now that he's the co-founded Vorum, he's rejoined, and he's very much focused in on helping companies be successful, and primarily with the work that he's doing to set up in Malaysia and to export from Malaysia. Louis, I think you also have some examples of successes, and wonder if you could share those now.
Thank you, Doug. Yeah, so I think if you talk about manufacturing for many companies in the world, people normally think of China as the default choice. Then I think after the tariff and the trade war 8-9 years ago now, companies were starting to look at countries like Vietnam and Thailand and Indonesia and so on and so forth. Malaysia really comes into the radar very early on. I don't know why is that, but I think in Malaysia we've got so many of these big global multinational companies operating in Malaysia for the last 30, 40, 50 years. Companies like Dell, HP, AMD, Intel, Micron, Honeywell, Texas Instruments, they've all been in Malaysia for many years. And I think somehow Malaysia has always been this hidden gem for all the reasons that all the other speakers have been speaking about, the skilled labor regulations, intellectual property laws, and so on and so forth. So I think what I find a lot of successes trying to help companies manufacture out of Malaysia. I know with Vorum we have a manufacturing company as we do design and development and contract manufacturing for companies. Primarily will be European and American companies, and the one of the key advantage that I find is the ability to converse in English, because we have our meetings, internal meetings, in English, and we have our documentations done in English, and we use the same documentation and the same language that we speak to our European customers. So I find that that makes the entire manufacturing process so much easier. And of course, proximity, I think this was mentioned as well, proximity to other supply chains within the Asian region. We can buy raw materials from China under ATIGA, so under some free trade agreement. And if we do focus on the value engineering side of things, we can actually be a lot more cost competitive with many other countries in Southeast Asia. I think to sum it up, I think there are many success stories. Many multinationals have been operating in Malaysia. The country has been always a trade nation. Many different countries have had success stories. Many different companies from different countries have set up in Malaysia. The Japanese are here, the Germans are here, the Swiss are here, the Americans are here, and I think I can take this one example, like Porsche, has opened its first manufacturing site outside of Germany, and they picked Malaysia as the first factory outside of Germany. So I would say Malaysia has many boxes thick, and we can bring value to a lot of product owners around the world. And the key really is making the right products with the right quality at the right price for consumers around the world. All right.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Great comments. Ben, I wonder if before we take any final question, do you have any wrap-up comments that you'd like to make? I presume that whether it's you or Lewis, you were two of the key people that people should reach out to. And all of the people here on the call today are people that are well connected, are connected with each other, and can help and support any company that's interested in Malaysia. Ben, would you like to make some final comment?
Yeah, thank you, Doc. So in principle, basically, we are here to assist. So that's my key takeaway, actually, regardless of any situation with the trade dynamics, with the upcoming January 20th, regardless, whatever decisions or whatever policy changes, we are here to assist and facilitate, be it Malaysian companies or US companies. Reach out to us. Let's see how we can make things work. And yeah, I just shared my email. I just shared my LinkedIn. Maybe the short presentation doesn't covers a lot of issues or a lot of information that required, but I can be accessible offline. Thanks, Doc.
I see Maha in India is interested in Mihas and getting more information there. So we'll make sure we get you two connected, or certainly get information to Maha. She's one of our leaders in India, and she's an exporting expert, very expert on trade. And so Maha, thank you for the work that you're doing to help companies be more successful in foreign markets and your expertise on trade overall. Lewis, would you like to make any final comments before we close the room? I don't see any additional questions.
Yeah, no, I think if anybody is interested in manufacturing any products in Malaysia, do reach out to either Ben or myself. We can link you up with the right guys to manufacture your products. Whether it's ourselves or somebody else, I think we're here to help as part. I'm here to help as part of the my membership of Global Chamber. Malaysia has really been a trading nation, and we would we are a very friendly country. If you are not looking to manufacture anything in Malaysia, do come to Malaysia for a holiday. Malaysia is also really pushing tourism as one of our key exports market as well. And next year is going to be Visit Malaysia year 2026. So a lot of promotion going on and really pushing Malaysia onto the global space.
That sounds like a great opportunity, and I'd love to return personally. We are segueing into a Global Chamber London meetup at this point. I encourage any of you who are interested in connecting in London to jump on that call. Jem, if in the next minute you could put that link, that would be amazing. It's a different Zoom link. Just in final comment, for Global Chamber is 525 chapters around the world, and every chapter is one of our favorites, but certainly KL is one of our very favorites because we love business, we love trade, we love ease of business, we love people that are good, professional, easy to work with. Certainly English, as it's been talked about, helps. A stable government, the economics of it being stable over time, and food. We haven't talked about food, but that's a key part of Malaysia. If you're a foodie, you know that Malaysia has amazing food, and is a key part of the fun that was talked about by Julian earlier by coming in and out of the country. So we believe in trade. We believe it helps the world. Malaysia's been very successful with trade. Part of that example is what multiple people said today about how almost never does anyone regret landing their business in Malaysia. So check it out, learn more. And if you're not in a position to invest in Malaysia at this point, at least visit and be a tourist. And now you have 5 more great connections in the country to be able to do business with. Thanks, everybody, for taking the time today. Be global and unstoppable. Happy New Year. And we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks,
Bye.
Doc.
Thank
Bye.
you,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone
Take
from
care.
New York City. Bye.